Welcome to today's conversation with leaders from different communities to talk about a contemporary topic that has been of concern to all of us in the past few months, namely civic engagement, your social responsibility. This program is brought to you by the Ismaili Jamaat Khana and Center. Through the guidance of His Highness the Aga Khan, the 49th hereditary Imam of the Shia Ismaili Muslims, the Ismaili Jamaat Khanas in the United States are more than places of worship and spiritual search. They are places of friendship, dialogue, and inclusivity, reaching out to neighbors to facilitate an exchange of ideas. This is achieved through hosting cultural programs such as educational seminars and lectures, art exhibitions, music and dance, and as a forum for civic leaders and others. These spaces and these programs hope to encourage community engagement and collaboration on issues of concern, as well as broadening intellectual horizons and fostering an appreciation of pluralism. The ethics of Islam, the Aga Khan has said, quote, bridge the realms of faith on the one hand and practical life on the other, end quote. No society can claim to be inclusive or represent its citizens unless those citizens are informed and participate in the political process. To reflect diverse communities and views, it is important for individuals to offer their time and talent by volunteering to become involved in both civil society and in civic organizations. This is even more critical for minorities if their voices are to be heard. Today's session will be moderated by Moise Kaba, an attorney practicing in Los Angeles. Please enjoy the program.
Thank you, Kareem. I'm really pleased to be here today with three very distinguished members of the community to talk about an issue that I think has been sitting on everyone's minds. 2020 has been a truly extraordinary year, from global pandemics to unprecedented and quite disturbing strife in our communities, from the fight for healthcare to racial justice. A lot of issues are percolating through all of the communities and towns in which we live. And a natural response to that is to throw your hands up and say, well, what can I do? What we'd like to talk about today is what we can actually do, and the things that any one of us listening, the steps that we can take to have meaningful impact in our community. And with that, I'm really pleased to announce and introduce to you the three panelists who are going to join us for a discussion about civic engagement, about the importance of individual participation in civic life, and about very specific steps that each one of us can take to have impact. So first, I'd like to introduce Sean Landris. He is the chair of the City of Santa Monica Planning Commission and the past chair of the Los Angeles County Quality and Productivity Commission. He's a co-founder of Jumpstart Labs, which advances research and innovation in philanthropy, interreligious engagement, and community building. Sean was featured as an Obama White House Spotlight Innovator, and his work has been covered in major national and international media. Over the past year, he has spearheaded the design of Civ Ruta, an award-winning initiative that equips civic volunteers to be in productive public service relationships with people from across the rich diversity of Los Angeles's ethnic and religious communities, and to bring the democratic values of diversity, inclusion, and dignity to service on public boards and commissions. A senior fellow at the UCLA Luskin School of Public Affairs, Sean has many letters after his name. He holds degrees from Columbia, Oxford, and UC Santa Barbara, where he earned a PhD in religious studies. Next, I'd like to introduce you to Aziza Hassan. She is the executive director of New Ground, a Muslim-Jewish partnership for change. Aziza is an experienced mediator and conflict transformation practitioner. She has extensive experience in program management and coalition building, something we need now more than ever. She has worked with diverse groups to deliver quality programming that develop the skills of its participants in the areas of civic engagement, advocacy, service learning, leadership, conflict transformation, and diversity training. Her work has been featured on Aussie, Yahoo News, MSN.com, public radio Speaking of Faith, the U.S. Institute for Peace, Arabic radio and television, as well as in the Chronicle of Philanthropy, the LA Times, the Jewish Journal, and In Focus. Her 2 years of AmeriCorps service gave her hands-on experience in community organizing and group problem solving. She is a recipient of the President's Volunteer Service Award, and she'd served on President Obama's Advisory Council on Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships in 2015. She also currently serves, and we're so lucky to have her, on Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti's Interfaith Advisory Council, and is a volunteer mediator with the LA City Attorney's Office. Finally, I'd like to introduce my friend, Sean Hassan, who currently serves as a trustee on the Austin Community College Board of Trustees. The Austin Community College system has 11 campuses, 70,000 students, and an annual budget of $350 million. Sean was elected to the board in 2016 with more than 120,000 votes. He was the first Muslim elected to public office in the Austin area and was the only Muslim serving in Texas at the time of his election. Countless Austin Community College students are low income or working class, and the majority work full or part-time to pay their way through their program. Many are working parents. Sean ran on a platform to bring down barriers that prevent these students from completing their community college programs, including the lack of accessible childcare for their children, transportation challenges, and the prohibitive cost of textbooks. Sean is a graduate of Stanford Law School, where he was the class valedictorian. He has his master's degree from the London School of Economics and his BA from Tufts University, and has been an advocate for as long as I have known him. I want to thank you all again very much for participating. We have a lot of questions. We're really eager to hear from you, so let's get started. The first question I have is for all three of you, but I will start by posing it to Aziza. Aziza, what issues keep you up at night?
It's really my pleasure to be here. So thank you for convening this really important conversation. The issues that really keep me up at night are, do we have enough people willing to step forward and be willing to have difficult conversations, like really step into the courageous conversations? Because more often than not, I'm seeing all around me that we're stressed, we're overwhelmed, we're overburdened, and we're not being civil in lots of ways. And I think it's beyond going civil right now. I think it's being able to lean in and have those difficult conversations. And I feel like there's some important culture work that needs to happen. And that means every single one of us needs to step up and be willing to say, I am part of this community and I believe in a vision where all of us belong, and I'm willing to work towards that vision.
Thank you. Sean Landra, same question for you. What issues are keeping you up at night?
I think what's keeping me up at night, like Aziza, is this question of whether we have really those muscles in place, those democratic muscles in place, that people are willing to put themselves out there to do the work, to keep our communities strong and to keep our communities inclusive and equitable and work together towards our common prosperity. Ultimately, though, that's on all of us. And I think the things that keep us up are the things that we don't always feel like we have control over. So what I will name is our political discourse is really getting out of control. And instead of winning and losing, and instead of having, winning and losing a battle at a time, but maintaining relationships across difference, we are demonizing the other. And sometimes there are reasons for it. But I think in the vast, vast, vast majority of time and over the great course of American history, or even, global history, get far more done when we can reach across the aisle and build relationships where they're possible. So what keeps me up at night is that I worry that the threads of our of democratic civil society are coming undone. And I think a lot about what we need to do to kind of weave them back together.
Thanks. Sean Hassan, what's keeping you up at night?
My time horizon, I think, is a little different. I agree with the long-term views that the others have taken. As a trustee of a community college, I'm thinking about COVID and its impact on the students that we serve. As we all, I think, know now, COVID has had a disproportionate impact on those who are already economically and socially marginalized. And thousands of the students at community colleges across the country, including Austin Community College, are individuals who are barely making ends meet. They're coming in to try to, get a degree or complete a program that would allow them to get a slightly better paying job.
Well, Sean, that's a good segue into my next question for you. So what you've identified an obviously very pressing issue. So what can you do? What could anyone do in their role? If one were to have a role of trustee like you do, what's in your power to do?
Yeah. Well, in our particular case, I think what I try to do, what I hope my colleagues try to do, is to really think about the individuals who are on the margins in the context within which we live, whether that's a city or a state. In our case, it's our students, and what are the ways in which policy as a whole may disproportionately affect a certain segment of those we serve. How are some able to access certain facilities more than others? We see it even in voting, as voting is taking place right now. There are some communities that are able to easily access polling locations and exercise their right, and others that are not. And so I think as a general rule for folks who are in positions of some influence and power, it's really thinking about those who might be at the margins, those that are least able to perhaps access the resources that we're trying to make available in general. And in our case, it's about thinking about the internet connectivity issues that arise when we move all of our classes online. It's the hardware limitations. It's the lack of English proficiency that so many of our students have that will make online classes challenging for them. The lack of technology proficiency, and then systematically working through solutions that attempt to address those barriers to access.
Aziza, you've served on the LA Civil and Human Rights Commission, and for those of the listeners that aren't familiar with it, can you just briefly describe what that commission does, and in particular describe its sort of resonance in this moment in time that we're all living through?
Gladly. So the Civil and Human Rights Commission was tasked by ordinance to investigate complaints of discrimination and enforcement against violators. We do this by holding businesses and individuals accountable for discriminatory practices that deny the equal treatment to any individual in private employment, housing, education, or commerce. And essentially what this boils down to is if you feel like you've been discriminated against, you can go onto the website, which you can easily Google by just Googling LA Civil and Human Rights Commission. You can file a complaint, and it'll go through a process of review and interview, et cetera. And then if someone, if it escalates and like throughout the process, like there's a general manager, people can be ultimately fined. And like there's a conflict resolution process where people can seek mediation, et cetera, and even appeal. And that's where my role as a commissioner comes in. There's 7 of us, and we would actually be able to hear the appeal and make a decision. So it's a quasi-judicial body. And the whole idea here is we are a city of so many different ethnicities and backgrounds, and we speak so many languages in Los Angeles. And if we really do believe in pluralism and diversity, we need to be able to say, like, you have a process by which you can say something's not right, and it needs to be seen and it needs to be heard. And this is really the role of this particular commission.
Thank you for that, Aziza. You've again provided a really nice segue. I suspect that a number of people listening, in particular young people listening, have been affected personally or or by very close proximity to some of the injustices, let's call them, that we've seen. And that has metastasized in some communities. There are protests. There is a lot of conversation happening about the Black Lives Matter movement, indigenous rights, LGBT rights. And I suspect a lot of people who are listening are wondering, I care about this. This affects me. This affects my friends. This affects my family. I want to do something. And so I want to ask Sean Landers first. You have a lot of experience working with a lot of municipalities, a lot of cities at all levels. If someone who is listening to this wants to get involved in government service, in public service, in civic society, in civil society, can you give me something concrete as a step that they should be taking in that direction?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the first thing that I would say to anybody who's watching or listening to this is that there are so many different ways of getting involved. Citizenship, and I don't mean a passport, I mean participating in the public square, expressing yourself as a stakeholder. Here in California, I don't like to talk about citizen engagement, for example, because there are so many people who are not citizens in California who are absolute stakeholders in our communities, and we need to be listening to everyone. So that's the first point. If you feel like you are a stakeholder, there are so many things you can do. You can participate in, you can volunteer for a social service that you care about. You can participate in a protest or a rally. You can you can write letters. You can make phone calls. There are a wide variety of things that you can do. For some people, and I really want to give a shout out to a friend of many of ours, Brilo Skoda, who talks about this as, what does it mean to be a citizen? And it's okay to focus in one area and not another. There are people for whom movement politics, protest politics really resonate. And there are a few people for whom government work really resonates. And there are people for whom both work. But I think the point is to recognize that, we all have something to offer, and all of those offerings are absolutely vital to a functioning, healthy democracy. So let me go deep a little bit on the question of what does it mean to get involved in government work? Well, in most states, I'm not going to make an absolute generalization. In most states, there are rules about not only the fact that meetings have to take place in public of government agencies and boards and commissions, but that before the members of those boards and commissions make, and councils, city councils, school boards, college boards, before the members make decisions, they have to actually pause and listen to what the public thinks. It's called public comment. So I think one step forward, which is really valuable, is to find out when a board is going to act on something that you care about, and to go down to where that is, or to sign up on Zoom, or to sign up on the phone and actually speak your mind about it. Say what you think. You'll have 2 or 3 minutes. But the truth is that many of the people who call in on a regular basis represent a fairly narrow slice of the electorate or of the stakeholder group. And so hearing a new voice, hearing a fresh voice, hearing your voice, your hopefully positive, constructive, solution-oriented voice will really be welcome to those decision makers. I think that's a big first step.
That's excellent. Thank you for that. Aziza, same question to you. If someone who's listening to this is really wants to know what is a concrete next step I can take to have my voice heard, to talk to issues that I care about or I have ideas about, what would you recommend they do?
I agree with Sean's analysis wholeheartedly. I think that the public comment is a really important venue to approach with. And here's where I would really specify. If you just Google commissions in your area, right? So like I usually Googled LA City commissions. I have a web page open, and then I can notice that like there's a lot of commissions here. So if there's a commission where you already have expertise, you can, one, click and see when that commission is meeting and then do the call-in. And you could also even just reach out to the general manager or say like the staff who support that commission. We're all looking for extra support. And if you're already an expert in an area, it can be really valuable. But just to think about the scope of what's possible for you. Like there's like Sean mentioned, like it's easier than you think. And like some things, there are some hurdles to some. So like, for instance, the city commissions are staffed, like you really need to have a connection with the office of the mayor and like the chief of staff. And then you kind of can get expedited on the commission chain. But like also there's appointments at the county level. And so you go to different members of the boards of supervisors. And then there's the governor, and that one is an application process. And there's lots of different ways that you can kind of tap in. And so at this, like, I would recommend like taking a look online, seeing what their agendas are, and seeing where you already have expertise and where your passion lie. Because ultimately, some of this work can take a lot of like, there's like it can be boring, right? But if you have an expert talk about it, like there's a lot that can be done, and they need solid volunteer power of people who care about the issues and who are willing to put in the work.
Thank you. Sean Hassan, let me ask you the same question, but I want you to expand on it with the following variation. So tell us, what can someone do if they really want to go out this next week and find a way to get involved? So that's the general question. The more specific question is if the way they want to get involved is by running for office, what are the 2, 3, 4 things you suggest they focus on?
Well, if you want to get involved in this next week, I hope you've voted already. And if you want to, sign up to be a poll worker or a poll observer, those are things that you could probably do in the next 7 days and have tremendous impact. And as Aziza said, you can Google organizations and entities that would allow you to do that sort of work in the next week. I think more broadly, Moise, I think individuals who are interested in running for office long term should begin by identifying, as Aziza said, those things that they are passionate about, that they care deeply about, the areas that they see as avenues to affect more equity and fairness and justice in the world, just as you have, Moise, associating yourself with organizations that are fighting for the types of things that you want to fight for, and whether that's in a courtroom as you've done, or whether that's in out in a park or in a shelter serving food. Find the things that you care about and begin to immerse yourself in that sort of work. I think secondly, it's important for individuals who want to run for office to really, be an absorber of what's going on in the world, and over time, you can then begin to go deeper and deeper and deeper into policy issues.
Sean Landris, let me ask you. You are the chair of the Santa Monica Planning Commission. What do you do in your role as chair, and what does the commission do?
So the Planning Commission, like in Santa Monica, like planning commissions around the country, is the primary land use commission for the city of Santa Monica. That means that, and I want to say, because I recognize that this is a national conversation and we're talking very specific to one city in California. In some states, planning commissions are actually elected because of their role. In California, I believe everywhere planning commissions are appointed and they are required to exist in every city. So what a planning commission does is hear land use permit requests over a certain size, appeals of land use decisions that have been made by staff, make recommendations regarding zoning, make recommendations regarding development standards, that then are sent to the city council for final approval. So typically, for instance, if you've heard about if you've heard about the housing crisis, specifically affordability crisis in California, and questions about whether or not we are doing enough to build housing, I can tell you that land use rules and regulations will directly affect how easy it is to build housing, how much it will cost to build that housing, and ultimately how much, whether or not that housing will be affordable to people once they're buying the housing.
Well, Sean, tell us how does one, you mentioned you were going to touch upon this earlier.
Yeah, sure.
How would one find a commission to work with? And maybe it's not an appointment, appointments take time, but a commission, a board, a subcommittee that they can work on. What would you recommend as sort of concrete things people can do?
Well, so the first thing is really to volunteer. I think what you really want to do is decide for yourself what your goal is. If your goal is public service and you really don't care what the public service is, then it's a great idea. Find council members, city council members that you can build a relationship with, and find out where there's a need and step up there. But I think for most people, there are areas of interest that people have. They care about food, they care about housing, they care about transit, they care about social services, they care about parks and recreation, they care about the arts. I'm just giving you a sample. And so you can go and find that particular commission.
Well, thank you for that. And I think you've given us a lot of tips in a lot of different ways that people can go about getting appointed to a commission. Let me, with that, ask Aziza, how did, not all of us can be the executive director of an extraordinary organization like Newground. So how did you get appointed to the commission and to the Los Angeles Civil and Human Rights Commission? And what would you suggest for somebody who wants to, come and work with you on that commission?
So it's interesting. So both this particular commission and my appointment at the White House with the Obama administration were because I was just willing to step up and be there for people. And I think that's also one of the things that I admire about Sean Landris is that whenever I need to call and whenever I have a question, I know there's somebody who's going to be there for me on the other side. And so I can't underscore the importance of showing up for people. And that's really the secret sauce to any of this.
Can I interrupt to say that that's mutual? Because it really goes both ways. And that's, I feel the same way about you, Aziza, and our service is to our communities is that so much stronger because we have each other and we have others as well who have us. Sorry, I just wanted to express that.
No.
We're all about the love here. So, Aziza, so you were saying showing up and being there. Anything else that you think is important?
No, absolutely. So and by showing up, I mean being responsive, thoughtful, quickly. I think those are things that I especially also took from my experience at the White House is that whenever so Melissa Rogers was running the Office of Faith-Based Neighborhood Partnerships, and I would send an email and I kid you not, moments later I would get a response from her that was thoughtful and right on. And I have that really stuck with me and it resonated. And so the more we can be thoughtful and responsive and persistent with each other, I've seen it pay dividends. And really with the LA Mayor's office, so I sit on his advisory council, right? And I've been supportive to his staff. That's the second thing that's really important is it's not just about the elected official. It's about a solid relationship with the members of the staff, where you are willing to be a thought partner, willing to engage and to give them tough feedback that is honest and gentle all at the same time, because they'll thank you for it later. So not to underestimate the members of the staff, because that's a really important entry point.
Thank you, Aziza. Sean Hassan, this is a question I have for all of you, so the others of you can begin thinking about it. But you've really, all of you have gotten involved in really quite admirable ways. But I assume that your journey to the positions that you currently have were not without challenge. So Sean, my question for you is, what was the most challenging thing you faced when running for office, and what do you wish you knew then that you know now?
Well, the running for office, I think, you know, when I filed Moyes in August of 2016, my older son, who's now 4 years old, was 8 weeks at the time, and you know, as soon as you file, even before you file, the pace picks up, and you're on the campaign trail on a daily basis. You know, multiple events a day, and so that, you know, in that initial period, to be very candid, you know, it was simply juggling family commitments, wanting to be there for my newborn while being on the campaign trail. And the campaign trail is both a sprint and a slog, and so you're at it, you know, every day, moving as quickly as you can. And in local races like the one I ran, you know, you don't have a staff, and so you're coming home and calls and writing emails and reaching out to folks for financial, and you're writing your speeches for, you know, the barbecue to that Sunday, and so, and everything, and you're in touch with the printer for your signs, and so there's a lot of juggling. And if you're working, if you've got a family, if you've got other things you care about, other commitments, as I do, then it's a lot to juggle. In that spirit, you know, what I wish I would have done then was to really recruit a team of people who, you know, care about the things I care about, who I'd known. I was reluctant at that time to do that because I knew little about running, that I felt I might be wasting other people's time, and I wouldn't know what to ask them to do for me. In retrospect, I think, you know, we could have all learned together, and some of the wonderful folks that I know would have been up for the excitement of pain and the, you know, idea of putting ourselves in a position to do the good work that we've been doing. So I wish I would have reached out and built out a team to help balance it all.
I think it's a really interesting point, because it's yet another opportunity for people who are looking to engage in public service and in their communities to get engaged. You can volunteer for campaigns. You can find people who are like-minded and share the passions that you have, and say, hey, can I volunteer with something to help you? Even if I may not be the one with the appetite to go, you know, do the debate or give the speech at the, you know, the backyard barbecue. Aziza, similar question for you. Is there something, you know, in your sort of journey that's now spanned administrations and different levels of government, is there something that you wish, you know, if you knew then, that is, if you were listening to some panel discussion like this, that you wish someone would have told you about getting involved in the challenges and overcoming the challenges of doing so?
You know, I just wish I had gotten more involved sooner, because I was worried that I wasn't qualified enough, or because I was worried that the barrier to enter was too high. And so I became a volunteer mediator back when fresh out of college in Kansas, and I did a lot of small claims court mediation. And then I went through this Los Angeles city attorney's mediation training program. And in LA's case, the training is completely free, and they need some really solid mediators who are willing to volunteer their time. So you can get the skills for free. There's all these resources that are out there for you. You just have to be willing to look for them. And I think just being willing to look is really important. Sometimes I feel like we undercut ourselves, or at least I undercut myself, because I wasn't willing to step forward sooner. And then the third thing is surrounding myself with people with the expertise or the experience that of the step that I want to go to next. So like when I joined this current commission, the Civil and Human Rights Commission, this was the first time it was this particular, like I'd gone through the ethics training with the White House, et cetera. And like, I don't know, there's just something about ethics training that just makes me like crazy, just because it just makes it, I mean, there's a lot. And it makes me worried because I don't know that I'm wading through all the pieces that I need to. But I called Sean Landris and he's like, oh, sure. And he like walked me through, and all of a sudden the stuff that I had, gone through and waded through the training, like it wasn't quite as intimidating as it was before. Because he was able to say, yeah, like when this happens, do this. And when someone shows up at a meeting and they're angry, like do this. And like, it's really helpful information. And so surrounding yourself with knowledgeable people who have already been in that step before is really important. And I'll say, like, when I asked people, like I called Ibu Patel because he had done the White House appointment before I did. Like he's one of the first. And like people are really generous with their time. But we have to still ask. And so that was a really great lesson. Like people, I think, that are willing to do this kind of thing, or at least in my experience, a lot of people step forward and they were willing to talk to me on the phone. And so I would say take advantage, definitely step forward.
Aziza, you mentioned the White House appointment and the Garcetti appointment, and sort of leads me to wonder, what if I live in a state where my politics don't quite align with the politics of the people in power? How do you think I could still have opportunities to serve at on commissions, on boards, in a way that can impact change?
Oh, without a doubt. It's interesting. Like there's so after college, during graduate school, et cetera, I was in the Wichita area. That's where I also did my AmeriCorps service. Like the act of doing service just naturally connected me with people that were already active in different ways. And even like we were in more, say, conservative spaces, and like we were having to either vote on things or educate folks on specific issues or whatever that were coming up on different here in California, it's ballot measures. Canada, it's a blank what it was at the statewide level when I was in Kansas. But people want information and they want people to treat them with kindness and respect. And so whenever you show up, if you can show up with compassion and information and you're willing to listen and lean in, you can make some solid allies, even if you're not aligned in maybe your approaches, maybe you're more conservative or less so or whatever. And I found that that act of being willing to just, one, show up, but two, do your homework and lean in where people need you. That's really what matters the most.
Well, let me ask Sean Landris a sort of related question, but perhaps only in the very meta sense. You're the chair of a commission. You mentioned you were appointed by consensus. I suspect that there are diverging views on your commission and other organizations that you're a part of. How do you navigate that? How do you get people to consensus, particularly on issues as important as the ones you're talking about, homelessness and all of the very many things that a planning commission has to do, their silent power, as it were?
Yeah, I think, look, and it's not just the planning commission. It was social services. It's the quality and productivity commission. I think we've had to deal with consensus issues in a variety of different ways. Let me start by picking up a thread from your question to Aziza, which had to do with is there a way to get involved in the process when you are not in the majority, in the political majority, in the cultural majority? And I think the answer absolutely is yes. But what I will say is, and I want to go back to something I said at the beginning about different modes of service. If you fundamentally question the underlying legitimacy of the whole enterprise, and there are people who believe that, and we've had moments, right, where we've all been in the streets because we fundamentally questioned the legitimacy of the enterprise, right? It's why we say Black Lives Matter, because we think there are some real historic structural problems with the way African Americans have been treated, right, since 1619, then government service may not be the most effective way for you to express yourself, be heard, and be effective. But I think if you are of the mind that you have views that are in the minority, but you are committed to building a better community for everyone. Recently, there was a video put out by the Democrat and the Republican who are running for governor of Utah. And I don't know if anybody has seen it, but they each affirm that while they disagree on how to get there, they acknowledge that each is committed to core values that are shared by all Utahns, right? So if you're in that space and you can be in that space, I think that's the place to begin. And that's the place to start to get to consensus in decision making. I would say there are times when we really need, 6-0 votes, 7-0 votes on things, on commission, 17-0 votes on my quality and productivity commission. Sometimes we get them, but a lot of the time we'll get to the place where building consensus means we all do our best to get to the best possible version of a project, and then we hope that a majority will vote for that project on the grounds that it is the best possible version of itself, right? That's what I think is this kind of healthy consensus, is where we're all in it for the best possible outcome, the most respectful possible outcome. And then we have to vote our conscience. And I do want to say, you've always, no matter what, I think it's really, I can't stress enough, you have to be able to sleep at night. You have to be able to live with yourself. Do not do anything where at the end of the day, you look back and you say, I shouldn't have done that. Even if it means alienating someone temporarily, if you come in with that goodness of heart, with that commitment to genuine community building, please make sure you act in accord with your conscience. I think it's important to recognize that, we're here with IJKC. I'm Jewish. I recognize that being Jewish is a great way for me to be a human being, but I'm also acting in a multi-faith, multi-ethnic democracy where each one of my colleagues is bringing their lens of values to their public service. And I hope and I trust that each one of my colleagues is acting not just through the lens of, what is the law and what is policy, but what does their conscience encourage? How does their conscience help them think better and make better decisions? That's what makes our decisions better, that diversity of perspective. But at the end of the day, I am truly trusting that everybody is acting in accord with their conscience and that each of us can sleep at night. And so again, that consensus is not, did we get a 7-0 vote? It's, did we all act in our best, as our best selves and our most expert selves and our whole selves in community with community to get to that result?
Thanks, Sean. It's yet again another good transition to my question for Sean Hassan, who has always really been a pioneer in visibility for people, Ismaili Muslims in particular. And for those of you who haven't checked it out and are listening, Sean gave the graduation speech, the student speaker at the Stanford Law School graduation in 2011, and I encourage everybody listening to go make a few minutes and watch it on YouTube. You can also compare, the Sean in 2011 to the Sean of 2020 and see the effects that service has had on him. But Sean, let me ask you, with that long wind up, what do you think it is important for Ismaili Muslim visibility for there to be Ismaili Muslims serving on boards, on commissions, in elected office, and why?
Oh, absolutely. I think not for visibility, but as a extension of values and not just running for office, but the myriad ways that we've discussed already today, the ways in which you serve in your life, Moise, using your professional skills, your legal skills to advance, equity and equality, justice and fairness, and finding whatever are available to individuals, whatever their comfort level is, whatever their passions are, finding ways to affect change. And so certainly elected office is a platform, but as we've discussed today, there are just so many ways that individuals can do that. I think, for me, it has been an opportunity to not in an over the head type way, but in a hopefully a very clear and direct way to show those in my community, those in the broader community where I live, about the values of our faith, about the Ismaili community in particular, but about Islam more broadly, and about how people of faith, bring a set of values to the public space. We grew up, Moise, you and I know each other for a long time, learning about pluralism and about inclusivity and about caring for the most vulnerable in our communities. And I know those are values that Sean and Aziza spend a lot of time promoting as well. And so those are the values that inspire so much of my work, inspire my interest in policy, inspire my desire to run. Those are the values that work. And so running for office for me is a way to demonstrate those values through the work that I do, through the issues I prioritize, and internally, within the Ismaili, it's been wonderful to be able to hopefully inspire others ways that they can put their faith into practice as well. So I hope that answered your question, Moise.
It did. Thank you. All right. Well, that's the end of the questions that I have for you. And as I hope has been conveyed through my questioning, I found your responses really enlightening and very motivating. And so I thank you for that. I'm going to go ahead and pause now and invite Munira Virani on. She's got some questions that have been posed by some Ismaili Muslim students that she'd like to ask. And I believe she has a question for each of you. So Munira will take over and I'll be back in a little bit.
Thank you for that, Moise. This has been a very enlightening conversation. And I think we have some really interesting questions that our youth have set forth for each one of you specifically based on the experience that you guys have. So the first question is for you, Aziza. It's from Zara Haji from Santa Clara Valley, who's currently working as a district representative for Senator Scott Wiener. And her question is, Aziza, as you have extensive experience working through conflict and conflict resolution, I'm wondering if you have any advice for our youth that want to get civically engaged, but are also entering a time of very intense conflict and polarization.
Thank you for your service. I know that this time especially is incredibly challenging to lean in when you feel at times, or I feel at times like I can't do anything right. And so that's when actually I need people around me the most, and I need to know who I can count on. And so I have a short list of, who are the people around me who are not just consensus builders, but who are willing to listen to my concerns and help me reframe and articulate what I'm trying to say so that people can hear me. And then the second piece I would really, really strongly encourage you is there's all these mediation programs and they're all over the place. Some of them are free, some of them are reduced, but they're there and they're remarkable. So at the LA City Attorney's Office, where I've gone through their training, I'd done it before. It's a good refresh, but they needed lots of mediators who are willing to mediate between police and demonstrators who were people who were protesting. And they needed to be able to rely on people with some solid skills, and we need those people. And so if you can invest in those skills, I don't think they're remarkably costly because there's a lot that's there. Like I first received my training on college campus, and then again with the LA City's Attorney's Office. So those tools and those resources are out there, and I would just strongly encourage you to invest in yourself, because by doing that and by building your own capacity to be able to have the difficult conversations, that's really what's going to help. Plus, there's programs like New Ground where you can, like ours is Los Angeles based, but we have a high school program that a number of Ismaili students, including people who have put on this program, have recently graduated from, both for professionals and for high school students. And there's New Ground is an amazing program, and there's lots of other incredible programs out there. Find them.
Thank you. That was very insightful. I think just identifying the resources and not backing down, which is what I hear you say, I think is extremely important for our youth. So thank you very much for that. And yes, the New Ground program is fantastic. A lot of our youth have participated, and we've loved that. The next question is for you, Sean Landreth. It's from Farah Noor from Los Angeles, who's currently working as a regional partnership director for an education nonprofit called College Track. And her question is, what sort of innovation have you seen that has increased public engagement in fulfilling civic duties?
That's a great question, because civic duties, sometimes they're not fulfilling. Let's just acknowledge that. Sometimes we just have to show up and do the work that needs to get done. I feel very strongly that the arts are a hugely important vehicle for civic expression. We have some tremendous mural work and mural heritage across Los Angeles. I think about, for example, there's a mural in North Hollywood called The Great Wall of Los Angeles. And it was a mural created by an artist called Judy Baca, who took the opportunity to tell a story of Los Angeles at the time that she made this mural many, many years ago, which was a Latino story of Los Angeles and a multiracial story of Los Angeles that had not really been told in the way that the artist saw it and the artist community saw it. It's very powerful. And there are other artistic modes of expression that allow people to say what they see in the world and the world they want to create. As far as what's happening during COVID, I think, in many respects, this very conversation, we might have had this conversation in person, and then it would have been limited to the number of people who could actually show up in the place where we are. It's highly unlikely that all of us would have been together, because Sean Hassan's in Austin, and Aziza and Moaz and I are in LA, but not everyone is in LA. The fact that we can do this over Zoom or over StreamYard is innovative in and of itself. Our planning commission meetings have more participation because people can call in, they can send emails. I'm not sure I'm getting to the heart of your question, but I think that these innovative modes of civic engagement, I'll just close with one other, which is something like Ciclavia in Los Angeles, which is celebrated its 10th anniversary this month of October, closing down city streets and opening to cars and opening them up to bikes and pedestrians and all kinds of community life. That is civic engagement, because that's inviting people to create the civic future that they want to live in. And I really hope that everyone listening will find their ways, whether it's through the arts or through environmental activism or other ways, to express that vision.
Thank you, Sean. That's actually great. I participate in the Ciclavia every year, so I know exactly what that feels like, and it's a fantastic, thing to participate in. And back to your point about the arts, I think it's such an interesting concept, because I don't think anyone's ever spoken about getting involved through the arts, and I think it's great. The Smiley community actually put up a national Jubilee Arts Festival, which I had the pleasure of and the honor of project managing. So we have a lot of art within our community, artists within our community, which I think is an interesting way to participate in this. So thank you for that insight. Truly appreciate it. The next question is for Sean Hassan. It's very hard to call you that, but it's from Kiran Pradhan, who is currently studying informatics and pre-medicine at University of Washington in Seattle. And her question is, very heavy, how do you handle Islamophobic and xenophobic comments?
Well, I actually want to start, if you don't mind, Munir. I want to pick up where a little bit of where Sean was going on the role of arts, and you spoke to it, just to say that yes, indeed, His Highness, has encouraged arts and culture to actually, as a forum, to bring people together and to engage in dialogue and discussion where there is difference, and whether it's through the work of the Aga Khan Museum or through the Jubilee Arts festival that you led here in the U.S. and that took place in Lisbon. I think there is a huge emphasis placed by His Highness and the Ismaili community in leveraging arts and culture as this very special and unique way to encourage engagement and encourage dialogue. And now more than ever, we need dialogue to bring people together and to find solutions to really sticky challenges that are confronting our society. So I wanted to start with that, related even to the issues of Islamophobia and xenophobia. I think others have alluded to this. You even in difficult times where there are those sorts of challenges, I think it's just important to engage, to stay engaged, as Aziza mentioned, to find communities of individuals who share your values. It doesn't have to just be your faith communities. It's the communities that you create in the service work you do, whether it's in the political space, whether it's in voluntary work you do. I know, Munira, you're very involved in civic engagement through drives and supply drives. Council is really so whether it's in that volunteer space, whether it's in the activist space, whatever that space is, find community and individuals who share your values and who can be a support system for you. And in my experience, it's been about throwing myself into the work. If you're ultimately engaged in this work to advance justice, to advance equity, to advance fairness in society, and you're passionate about that, just sometimes putting your head down and doing the work and hopefully seeing the results of your work. Sometimes it's not immediate. Sometimes it takes a while. There, are certainly in elected office barriers, whether that take longer than you would hope that they take. I found that immersing yourself in the work is a really important way not to get discouraged in the face of issues like Islamophobia and xenophobia. Doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt, doesn't mean that it doesn't weigh you down at times, but I find that if you are plugged into the communities that you're seeking to impact, chip away, you'll find great motivation in the work you do, and you can keep going.
Thank you. I think what I hear from all of you guys is don't back down, find your passion and keep going, and keep your head up, find like-minded individuals and chug along, and you will find your path, and you will find the ability to be able to civically serve in a very large capacity. So thank you so much, guys. I think that'll be very insightful for all our youth. Thank you.
And we have to speak up. We have to speak up for each other, because there are so many voices that are out there that want to shut us down, that want to exclude us. There are so many firsts, but we need them not to be the onlys. We need to have more diverse voices in our political life, and we need to have each other's back.
I just want to Sean's point, Moise, if that's okay. I know as you've come back on the screen, looking back and thinking about Munira's question, I don't remember as much the slights, the Islamophobia or whatever was directed at me 4 years ago when I ran. I do remember the people who stood up and had my back, and I'm close to them today. And they're individuals, from other faith communities, from the Jewish community and Christian communities, and individuals of no particular faith background at all. But to Sean's point, I think that what stuck with me was much less the Islamophobia I might have experienced, and much more the fact that people of all backgrounds, good people of all backgrounds, were willing, to stand by me and have my back. And I think we've got to continue to do that for one another, as Sean and Aziza have mentioned.
Well, I thank you all for that. There are a lot of virtuous battles to be had, whether that's racism, bigotry, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, xenophobia, misogyny, homophobia. But let me leave everyone with this. The first step in that battle is to vote. Vote, volunteer, have your voice heard. And with that, let's wrap up the panel. I want to thank you all again. And if we end on that call to action, then I think that's a good way to end. So thank you all again for your time, and we'll see you out there.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you, guys.